So yeah, I mean, there's another way you can look at this, and that is in terms of free will. In addition to the one I just did, you could look at it from the point of view of, like, to what extent would we, how do we perceive free will, and how would we know if we were like on some railway tracks in our lives, and every choice that we made, those railway tracks ahead of us had already been diverted along the choice that we were going to make. How would we ever know that that we weren't acting freely? And the choice. There's a sort of, I think it's an Arabic sort of story about death in the garden that I've always found kind of interesting. And the story goes that there's this slave in his master's garden, and he walks among the bushes, and he comes around the corner and comes face to face with death, you know. So, and he turns tail, runs back to his master and says, pleads with him, who's quite a kindly master, says, "Oh, please, master, I need to take your fastest horse, because I've just come face to face with death in a garden." And the master says, you know, "Yeah, go on, take the fastest horse, go to the stables and go, you know, get away." So off he goes. He gets on the horse, he rides. The horse falls out from underneath him, exhausted. He carries on running, and he runs all day and all night, and eventually, exhausted, comes to a village far away. And seeing this village, he heads toward the nearest inn, because he needs to get some water. He's exhausted. And just as he's about to push the door of the inn open to get some water, he feels a tap on his shoulder, turns around, and there's Death. He says, "But how did you know I was going to be here today? I saw you yesterday in the garden, and I've just, no one's ever ridden this far in a day, and a night." And Death says, "Well, yeah, that's why I was so surprised to see you in the garden yesterday, because I'd gone there to pick up the stable boy, and you were down on my itinerary for this morning here, and I couldn't figure out how on earth you could be there and be here for our allotted appointment." So, yeah, the story of that is that obviously, did the slave make free choices? Certainly. I mean, I can't see any part of this narrative, looking at it from the slave's point of view, that would indicate that he was acting under any kind of compulsion other than the desire to live, which is a fair enough compulsion to have. So, looked at from, a God's eye view, God would have known that, he sent Death to pick him up at that village. So he obviously knew that the slave was going to be there at the allotted time to be picked up. And so from that point of view, it was always certain that the slave would meet his fate that day in that place. But the slave, in this world, in this possible world, which will always, if it's the actual world, will always be the best possible world, that, was always going to be the case, even though the slave made totally free choices all the way down the line. So there could be a kind of perspectival issue here as well in relation to free will. We're not privy to all the possibilities that God has excluded to make this the actual world. And so, in that sense, we are always going to be acting in a way that is to some extent, blind about the outcomes, without obviously going against reason and without anything contradicting, without there being any contradictions there. So, yeah, another.